Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am so incredibly excited to guide you through this bright, fascinating journey into the foundational mechanics of microeconomics. If you've ever been curious about how the business world actually operates behind the scenes, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to break down this giant puzzle of economics into clear, structured, and really approachable pieces. So grab your digital notepad, and let's get started.
Okay, so let's kick things off with something we've all probably wondered about at some point. Why do airline tickets absolutely skyrocket around Christmas, while the price of your daily loaf of bread barely moves? It feels totally arbitrary, right? Well, I promise you, it's not. It's driven by the precise mechanics of pricing, demand, and production. To understand why your wallet takes such a hit in December, we need to start at the very beginning of how businesses actually build and price their products.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the costs of production, then scaling and diminishing returns. After that, we'll check out FIJI's manufacturing industries, dive into the price elasticity of demand, and finally, wrap up with pricing and tax strategies. Let's get into it.
All right, Section 1, the costs of production. Welcome to the factory floor. Think about it, every single thing you buy started out as a combination of natural resources, capital, and human labor. And none of that is free. In business, a company's burdens are divided pretty clearly. On one side, you've got fixed costs. These are your absolute no-matter-what obligations. Factory rent, loan repayments, permanent staff salaries. You have to pay these even if your factory produces absolutely nothing this month. On the flip side, we have variable costs. These fluctuate directly with your output. If you make 0 products, you buy 0 raw materials. But if you pump out 10,000 units, your raw material costs and hourly wages shoot up proportionately. You add these two together and boom, you've got your total cost.
Now, this brings us to a literal magic number when a business decides to grow: marginal cost. Basically, this is just the amount spent on producing exactly 1 extra unit of output. Why is this such a game changer? Because tracking the cost of that very next unit is the absolute secret to finding a company's technical optimum level. That's the sweet spot where inputs are combined super efficiently and average costs drop to their absolute minimum.
Moving on to Section 2. Scaling and diminishing returns. Basically, growth and its limits. So now that we've got costs down, a really logical question pops up. If a factory wants to make more money, why can't it just keep adding more and more workers forever? Can a business just scale up to infinity? Well, the short answer is no way. And the law of diminishing returns hits the nail on the head here. It states that as more quantities of a variable factor, like labor, are added to a fixed factor, like the physical size of your factory, additions to output will eventually decrease. Think about it. In the short run, your factory's size is fixed. You can't just magically stretch the walls overnight. So if you keep stuffing more and more workers onto the same assembly line, eventually they just start bumping elbows. Let's put some real numbers to this to see how it works. Check this out. When you hire your very first worker, they add 10 units to your output. Awesome! By the time you hire your 4th worker, they are super specialized, the line is humming, and they are adding a massive 30 units to your output. That's what we call increasing returns. But watch what happens when you cram that 8th worker onto the exact same fixed factory floor. It gets overcrowded, people are getting in each other's way, and they literally add negative 15 units. Your total output actually drops. That right there is diminishing returns in real life.
All right, Section 3, Theory Meets Reality. We are heading to FIJI's manufacturing industries. It's time to take these abstract textbook concepts about costs and scaling and drop them right into the bustling, real-world manufacturing ecosystem of FIJI. First up, let's examine government intervention in FIJI's garment industry. This industry didn't just appear out of thin air. It really kicked off around 1987 under a highly strategic tax-free zone scheme designed to boost export-led growth. The government literally stepped in with trade agreements, subsidies, and missed strategies to prop this sector up, turning it into a massive engine for exports, jobs, and global competitiveness.
And this industry is absolutely vital. It brings in major foreign exchange and provides thousands of crucial jobs, especially for women. But it's also a perfect example of how vulnerable variable costs can be on a global scale. You see, they rely heavily on preferential trade agreements like Spartaca and the MFA. Plus, today they are facing totally crushing competition from massive low-cost producers like China and Bangladesh, all while dealing with rising local wage and utility costs right at home. Now, let's pivot from garments over to the food sector to see how the government structurally supports the flour mill of FIJI, or FMF. Notice how the intervention here looks a bit different. Instead of just tax-free zones, we're talking about support for mini-mills, youth training programs, and massive food security policies. It's all pouring into FMF to ensure diversification and keep the region fed.
FMF has been around since 1973, and it's an absolute cornerstone for food security, not just in Fiji, but across the wider Pacific. But here's the microeconomic catch. FMF relies super heavily on importing premium Australian wheat. What does that mean for them? Well, it means their variable costs are completely at the mercy of global price volatility. Literally, a shipping delay or a global supply chain hiccup instantly threatens their production costs. It just goes to show how global markets dictate local fixed and variable realities.
Section 4. Price elasticity of demand. Time to look at the consumer reaction.
Okay, so we've built the product on the factory floor, navigated the global supply chains, and now the product is sitting on the shelf. Let's pivot to your wallet to see how a business decides its final price. I want to ask you directly, how do you react to a price hike? Say your favorite coffee shop suddenly jacks up the price of your morning latte by $2. Are you still buying it, or are you busting out the French press at home? This reaction, your degree of responsiveness to a price change, is exactly what economists call the price elasticity of demand.
It basically boils down to a stark and incredibly important contrast. If a good has elastic demand, it means you, the consumer, are highly responsive to price changes. Think luxury items or things with tons of close substitutes. Price goes up, you just walk away. But inelastic demand, that's the exact opposite. These are your absolute necessities, things with zero real substitutes. Even if the price skyrockets, you're basically forced to keep buying them. Let's look at a fantastic example right from our source material to see this math in action. Meet Simon, a tailor over in Savasavu. He raised the price of his shirts from $15 to $20, and as a result, his weekly demand dropped from 50 shirts down to 40. Now, if we use the economic midpoint formula to measure this change, we get an elasticity coefficient of 0.78. Since that number is less than 1, it mathematically proves that the demand for Simon's shirts is inelastic. People still really needed his shirts, so the drop in sales was proportionately a lot smaller than his price hike.
And boom, that brings us right back to the hook question from the very start of our explainer. Why do airlines charge so much at Christmas? Well, because they know your elasticity. During the off-peak season, traveling is a luxury. It's highly elastic. If prices are crazy high, you just stay home. But at Christmas, going home to see your family becomes a reputed necessity. Your demand becomes highly inelastic. Airlines know you'll pay almost anything, so they maximize their profits right when demand is rigid.
All right, our final stretch, Section 5, Pricing and Tax Strategies. The ultimate application. So this whole elasticity thing isn't just a trick for tailors and airlines. It's literally the ultimate tool used by governments and massive agricultural sectors to make huge macro-level decisions. Take the kava harvest in Fiji, for example. If there's a poor national harvest, the overall supply drops, so the price of kava shoots up. Since demand for kava is fairly inelastic for regular consumers, total spending actually increases, and the national growers make a pretty solid return. But say a hurricane hits one specific local area like Kadavu, while the rest of the country is totally fine. Those specific local farmers suffer catastrophic losses because they just don't have enough yield to cash in on the higher prices. Location and supply dictate who wins the pricing game.
Okay, time for a thought experiment. Put yourself in the shoes of a government policymaker. You need to raise revenue to build roads, fund schools, the whole shebang. Based on everything we just learned about human behavior and elasticity, what types of goods are you going to apply indirect taxes to?
The answer is brilliantly logical, even if it hurts our wallets a bit. Governments deliberately target inelastic necessities for higher taxes. Think about it. If they slap a heavy tax on an elastic luxury good, consumers simply stop buying it, right? Tax revenue plummets to zero. But if they tax an inelastic good, something people absolutely need or are habituated to, consumers have no choice but to absorb that cost. They keep buying it, and government tax revenue absolutely soars.
Real quick, before we wrap up, we've got to touch on one other flavor of elasticity: income elasticity. This measures how your shopping habits change when your paycheck gets bigger. For normal goods, think luxury cars or premium foods, demand rises when your income rises. Makes total sense. But for inferior goods, like those basic lower quality substitutes, demand actually drops when you get a raise. Why? Because you finally upgrade to the better stuff.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. Think back to the last major purchase you made. Was it a true inelastic necessity that you literally couldn't live without? Or was it just a highly elastic luxury that some very clever marketing convinced you to buy? Understanding these microeconomic gears, from fixed costs in a Fijian garment factory to the elasticity of your very own wallet, truly gives you the power to see the business world as it actually is. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you next time.